It's time for the big one. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing my top 20 games of 2024. Board games, that is. My name is Nick Murray, and you are listening to the Bitewing Games podcast. What makes a favorite game? Is it the way it consistently entertains or surprises you, challenges or delights you, welcomes and invites you? Is it found in the excitement you feel to show it to others? The hunger you possess to return to it once more? The need to climb higher and explore deeper? The memories you smile back on and the people you share them with? No doubt it is all these things. A game is only as good as the experience it hosts and the emotions it generates for those at the table. Yet it's the players who fashion so much of that outcome. The perfect game for me might just be the worst choice for you. Despite our differences, we find ourselves here. Me sharing my strongest recommendations, and you hoping to find at least a spark of opportunity and or vindication. What could be more human than the desire to find and share common joys? I found that 2024 was a particularly strong year for board games. So strong, in fact, that I couldn't quite settle on only 15 games like last year. There were a few more games beyond 15 that were too good to be left off my list. So while this likely won't be a permanent increase for future years, for 2024, I'll be sharing my top 20 games. It's worth noting that I've intentionally excluded Bitewing Games publications from my top 20. As a daytime dentist and a nighttime cardboard vigilante, any design that we choose to champion will obviously be one that I love so much that I personally see to its fruition. Rather than bump another game out of the top 20 spotlight, I'll simply share afterwards what I love about each 2024 Bitewing release. I'll also grant some special awards to other games and expansions, including my favorite new-to-me game released before 2024, best game I didn't love, worst game I adored, and more. Let's celebrate 2024 gaming, shall we? Starting with my number 20 game of 2024, Fairy Ring. Fairy Ring is a simple drafting game of adding mushrooms to your tableau and moving your fairy around the mushroom circle created by all players' tableaus. The fact that you even pay attention to and interact with your opponent's tableaus makes it more interesting to me than 95% of the games in this genre. And it's interesting to decide whether to build your mushrooms wide for more frequent fairy hits or tall for more powerful scoring opportunities. All in all, it's an engaging little game that has left a good impression with everyone I've shown it to. If you play it too frequently, then some of the novelty might wear off. Admittedly, there is not a ton of depth or variety to explore upon repeat plays, but I plan to keep this one around anyway and break it out on occasion for a reliably good time. That is Fairy Ring at number 20. My number 19 game of 2024 is Inori. Speaking of strange yet satisfying games, Inori is a humble worker placement game that harkens back to simpler times while offering a new twist to the genre. Instead of following the modern trope of layering a dozen complex systems to keep you from cracking the solitaire puzzle, Inori is all about influencing your opponents in a simple system of collecting favor tokens and competing to score them. Every round, new cards and thus new worker placement spaces come out to replace the old ones. If a card's spaces are entirely occupied, then those players present get to score their matching favor tokens, and that card color will come out in the next round. If a card is not fully occupied, then that card color will be replaced by the opposite color for the next round. Depending on how many tokens you have relative to your opponents, you might want certain colors to shrivel up or bloom and flourish on the game board. While the theme is as intangible as its spirits, I love that it has me watching my opponents like a hawk. That is Inori at number 19. My number 18 game is Tokyo Highway Rainbow City. I've never played the original Tokyo Highway, but I've always liked the look of it. The table presence of this game has always been top tier, but my understanding is that the original version had issues. Most notably, the components were too fiddly for a game where the stacking and dexterity was supplemental to the core objectives. Rainbow City is an evolved edition of Tokyo Highway where the production is much better And the titular Rainbow City mode is much more interesting. The popsicle stick highways now have rubber feet on them, making stacking much easier. The cars are likewise rubbery and grippy. But the real star of this edition is the Rainbow City mode. Now, instead of just racing to put out all your cars, while you crisscross your highways with opponent highways, you are aiming to complete as many objectives as possible. Normally, I prefer a game that doesn't make you tally up your score across a bunch of objectives at the end, but the objectives here are just plain fun. Plus, the score track is an actual racetrack that you push your cars along. You'll be aiming to surround buildings, pass through rainbows, build unbroken chains of cars, construct supports on developments, off-ramp at landmarks, and more. And the elaborate labyrinth of highways that you construct together is almost more satisfying than winning the game. That is Tokyo Highway Rainbow City at number 18. At number 17, I have Lure. If you know my tastes, then you know that I love a spicy dice game. For whatever reason, this genre seems to be more polarizing than most. Some people love these games, others hate them, and nobody can agree on which ones are best. But that won't stop me from listing Lure as one of my favorite releases of 2024. The clever twist here is that players secretly decide how many dice to roll in an attempt to catch the available fish. But the players who bid less dice get the chance to catch them first. Lure is all about walking that fine line between bidding enough dice to successfully catch the fish, but not too many dice that you let others catch the fish first. That is Lure at number 17. My number 16 game of the year is The Lord of the Rings: Duel for Middle-earth. Before I fell hopelessly deep down the rabbit hole of board games, Seven Wonders Duel was my favorite game for a good while. It took one of my most played games as a teenager, Seven Wonders, and made it a perfect little two-player drafting game for the early years of my marriage. Fast forward another 5 years and a few hundred board games later, and I finally revisited this system in 2024's Duel for Middle-earth. The Seven Wonders Duel core is just as good as I remember it, but now the points have been replaced by a race between the Fellowship of the Ring and the Dark Forces of Sauron. I love that there are 3 paths to victory, all of which can trigger in an instant: the Ring path, gaining alliances, and controlling the map of Middle-earth. Vincent Dutrait's artwork is a perfect fit for this world and story. No surprise that this game is already ranked in the Board Game Geek Top 100. It's a solid melding of 2 things that the hobbyist community already adores. That is The Lord of the Rings: Duel for Middle-earth, my number 16 game of 2024. My number 15 game is Kabuto Sumo Sakura Slam. And notably, a review copy of this game was provided to me by the publisher. Kabuto Sumo remains one of my favorite dexterity games thanks to its unique coin-pushing gameplay and breezy approachability. It's especially good at 2 players, but I understand how some folks had problems with it. The most common complaint seems to be that a game can drag on too long because players are able to undo the push that their rival just executed. Sakura Slam is the sequel to Kabuto Sumo that directly addresses this main complaint. Because Sakura Slam forces players to push their discs into a square ring from one of its corners, it's much harder to reverse your opponent's previous turn. On top of that, there is a new alternate way to win the game, by pushing the central gold belt out of the ring. From our plays, these changes have absolutely sped up the game and prevented the stalemates that Kabuto Sumo could succumb to. Plus, by tagging all 4 corners, meaning you push from all 4 corners across multiple turns, you can earn an exciting bonus push to really swing momentum in your favor. I also dig how many of the new insects utilize the corner posts with their abilities. In other words, Kabuto Sumo is better than ever with Sakura Slam. That's why it's my number 15 game of 2024. My number 14 game is Rebirth. As I mentioned in my first impressions post, Rebirth feels like a greatest hits tile layer, and that's certainly a good thing. Yet by not leaning too heavily on one of Knizia's other classics, it manages to carve out its own identity and feeling. The end result is nothing incredibly innovative or remarkably new, yet it's still solidly satisfying, and both maps offer distinct flavors. My favorite aspects of Rebirth include the gorgeous production and breezy turns of deciding where to place the one tile in your hand. That's my number 14 game of the year, Rebirth. My number 13 game is Moon Rollers. Moon Rollers is easily the best push your luck game that I played last year. It nails the tempting incentives to keep going, the satisfying payoffs when you strike gold, and the hilarious failures when you push too far. Even as your fistful of dice dwindles, there is always hope for a miracle roll thanks to the wild face and the gain more dice face. Unlike some push your luck games, Moon Rollers is also quite interactive by allowing players to work on completing a card together so that all participants can score points. Newcomer designer Robert Hovakimian has a bright future ahead if he keeps cranking out games as good as this one. That is Moon Rollers, my number 13 game of 2024. My number 12 game is Courtesans. Courtesans is a feisty little card game that has been a big hit at my table. This one just made the cut of my recent top 100 board games of all time list. Here is what I said there. Sometimes it's nice to just gather around the table for a quick communal bashing. As a 20 to 30 minute game, Courtesans delivers with funny and cutthroat moments. Each turn your hand of 3 cards must be split up. Play one to yourself, one to another player, and one to the table to influence the end game value of a suit. In addition to manipulating the incentives of the group, there are plenty of opportunities to nail each other either out of petty revenge or cunning calculation. That is Courtesans at number 12. My number 11 game is Skyrise. As a fan of auction games, Skyrise is the type of title that I love to see releasing in today's market. It's refreshing and revitalizing to the genre to see a game take auctions and make them evolving and spatial. Each higher bid is for a new spot adjacent to the last one. The bidding snake grows longer and taller as it twists and turns and winds around the city until finally everyone else passes and the last person standing erects the building that they bid. Then the snake begins anew as they start the next auction and the city districts become more cluttered over time. I've had great success teaching this to a wide range of gamers who seem to catch on quickly and invest fully in the wacky antics of Skyrise. That is my number 11 game. My number 10 game of the year is Galactic Renaissance, and notably a review copy of this game was provided to me by the publisher. After a 5-year hiatus, it's great to have designer Christian Martinez, the creator of Inis and Cairn, back on the scene with Galactic Renaissance. While this new release has proven to be more polarizing than I would have predicted, some folks insist that they would rather play Inis in every instance. I find that this political race of deck cycling is plenty unique and satisfying at my table. While it does require a large table, it ends up playing fast and smooth once your group gets the hang of this game's unique style. Much of the challenge rests on building up a solid infrastructure and then being able to quickly pivot and adapt to the changing public score cards. That is Galactic Renaissance at number 10. My number 9 game of 2024 is The Gang, which a review copy of this game was also provided to me by the publisher. Out of all the titles on this list, I would wager that The Gang has the best life expectancy in the market. That's because it takes the widely known concept of poker and makes it cooperative. This is a game that you can play with anyone, especially casual gamers. While it may not demand the depth of exploration with a consistent group that The Crew did, The Crew being another hit card game from publisher Cosmos, The Gang is certainly the better option as a quick filler with anyone and everyone. In fact, I've had the most fun with this one simply by showing it to different groups, ideally with 4 or 5 players where it shines best. That is The Gang, my number 9 game. My number 8 game of the year is Kelp, Shark vs. Octopus. I've mentioned repeatedly how 2023 was a good year for 2-player games, but I must admit that 2024 was no slouch either. We've already covered the rock-solid Kabuto Sumo Sakura Slam and the Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, but Kelp comes from the opposite end of the spectrum by being something entirely new and unique. One player acts as the octopus trying to survive, and the other player is the predatory shark. As a wildly asymmetric strategy game, Kelp manages to soar, or swim, where other designs of this genre often sink. The rules are streamlined, both creatures are engaging to play as, and the action stays focused on a shared interactive board. It's satisfying to see your creatures grow in abilities and power. And it's downright divine to see Weberson Santiago's aquatic artwork on full display across the cards and board. That is my number 8 game of the year, Kelp, Shark vs. Octopus. My number 7 game is Conic. Looking to get some of that Knizia juice injected straight into your veins? Conic is the answer. Conic is distilled Knizia delivered via IV therapy. It's simultaneous bidding where the decisions are fast, loose, and brutal. One moment you'll throw down your precious 8 only to have it beaten out by a blasted 9. The next moment you'll find yourself in a multi-disc bidding war over a spot you didn't even care all that much about to begin with. Every disc bid is gone forever, except the 0. The 0 is the only loyal subject who returns to you, despite you resenting its very existence, especially when you all bid 0, except for Tanya, who therefore wins the auction with a measly 2. Who does she think she is? Between the slick rule set and elegant production, I can't get enough of Conic. Sadly, this is by far the most difficult game on this entire list to acquire. I had to buy it directly from Japanese publisher CoroCoro Duo's shop and then jump through more hoops to get it shipped overseas to my doorstep. And it appears that even they are currently sold out of Conic. Dark times indeed. But maybe someday a savvy publisher will decide to release this hidden gem Knizia worldwide. Never say never. That is Conic, my number 7 game of the year. My number 6 game is Tower Up. Well, if the previous game, and more particularly its rarity, made you sad, then let the blocky plastic of Tower Up wipe away your tears. Tower Up is a beacon of hope in this modern gaming world. Like its titular skyscrapers, it stands tall and boldly displays the glory of light strategy gaming. Tower Up is the kind of design that impresses me far more than a big box Euro game with complex and layered systems. You won't find an ounce of fat in this rule set. It's a lean, mean evergreen about raising skyscrapers and cruising up the score tracks. You can play it with anyone, yet you'll uncover plenty of depth underneath its simplicity. That is Tower Up, my number 6 game of 2024. My number 5 game is Agent Avenue. Speaking of delicious elegance, Agent Avenue is one of the best bluffing games since the release of Skull in 2011. It's criminal how under the radar this game has flown so far, but maybe that's just because you have to order it directly from the publisher to acquire it in North America. In Agent Avenue, you simply present one card face up and one card face down for your opponent to keep one and leave you with the other. As you collect sets of these cards, they'll help you to advance forward or force you to move backward. The goal is simple: catch up to the other spy on the circular track. If you catch them, then you win. The magic of the game comes from the carefully crafted set effects that influence the mind games between the players. While Agent Avenue presents itself as mainly a 2-player game, it actually has a banger variant for 3 to 4 players as well. That is Agent Avenue, my number 5 game of 2024. My number 4 game is Einfach Genial 3D. If you would have told me that Ingenious 3D would be among my top 5 board games of 2024, I would have told you that you were crazy. Sure, I like Knizia games just as much as the next Knizia file, and I enjoy Ingenious as a family-weight abstract game, but I've never loved it. That all changed with the arrival of Einfach Genial 3D from the great land of Germany. Part of the reason that this game has been such a big hit is simply because it has hit the sweet spot for my wife and I. We are evenly matched and equally engaged in the competition. But the bigger reason is that this 3-dimensional spin on Ingenious has been so unexpectedly satisfying to play. The growth of the board, layered by chunky plastic tiles, is thrilling and strategic. Blocking your opponent's ability to score their weakest color is so much more nuanced than the obvious 2-dimensional blocking of Ingenious. Now you must build pits and peaks into your schemes. Especially at 2 players between evenly matched opponents, this really is one of the best abstract strategy games out there. It strikes a beautiful balance between casual and cunning, clever and comforting. That is Einfach Genial 3D, my number 4 game of 2024, currently really only available for North Americans through Amazon.de. My number 3 game of 2024 is Wilmot's Warehouse. Any game that tries something truly unique is going to earn a lot of points in my book. Any game that tries something unique and sticks the landing at my table is going to be a surefire winner. Wilmot's Warehouse is a cooperative storytelling memory game that jumps straight to the essence of play. Through creative brainstorming, you and your group must commit to memory the look and position of 35 different tiles. It helps to come up with a narrative that only gets more unhinged as time goes on and the tiles you draw force you to conjure wacky ideas. The daily mandates only serve to make things more hilarious by forcing extra restrictions upon the group. The best games are less about the maneuvers we pull or the combos we execute, and more about the moments we share. Wilmot's Warehouse is a delightful game of sharing moments, imagining stories, and creating memories. That's why it's my number 3 game of the year. My number 2 game of 2024 is Marabunta. Marabunta was the very first 2024 release that I had the pleasure of playing. Despite me then trying over 50 other releases from the year, Marabunta remained one of my very best of the lots. Marabunta feels like a revelation in the roll and write genre. It's so unique from the standard fare that some folks claim it isn't really a roll and write at all. But you are rolling dice and marking your chosen results with a dry erase board. So what else could it be? Well, it could be a 2-player tile placement strategy game. The agonizing decision space of Marabunta is found within the splitting and choosing of dice results. If I split the dice, then you get to choose and execute one of the options first. We'll mark our dice results on a shared board where our ant colonies are competing for territory and blocking each other out of regions. You'll also seek to earn valuable point-scoring cupcakes or powerful crates that can unlock various bonuses. It's such a meaty experience in such a beautifully compact box that it really cements Reiner Knizia's legacy as an all-time great designer of 2-player games. That is Marabunta at number 2. And finally, my game of the year, my number 1 game of 2024 is Arx. And notably, a review copy of this game was provided to me by the publisher. Arx was one of the easiest game of the year picks that I've ever selected. It's everything I want from a Cole Wehrle design. Politics, drama, wild swings of fortune, unexpected plot twists, challenging objectives, painful trade-offs, staggering depth, uncharted mechanisms, wrapped in an experience that is more approachable than ever. Well, for a Wehrle design, of course. While none of his games are necessarily easy to get to the table, Arx is the Wehrle design that is most likely to get played for me. Separating the design into a more approachable, competitive, compact box and a more wacky, heavy, and unwieldy expansion was a brilliant move on Leder Games' part. But the brilliance of the design is what truly deserves the spotlight here. Trick-taking proves to be a gritty but thrilling way to force players to adapt their space opera strategies on the fly. Arx gives you just enough tools and resources to pull off some truly unexpected schemes. With every play, I discover more layers to this cosmic onion, and it keeps me hungry to return once more. For being a genuinely innovative and deeply rewarding labor of love, Arx is my top board game of 2024. And while that settles my top 20 games of the year, we're not done yet. We have a lot more awards to give out. But before we get to those awards, we're going to celebrate the 2024 releases from us here at Bitewing Games, starting with my favorite logic deduction game, Spectral. Spectral is a game that we couldn't resist publishing because it has proven to be my favorite logic deduction game I've ever played. This is thanks to everything that makes this design so unique within its genre, particularly the spicy interactive bidding, thrilling climactic reveal, and spooky thematic vibe. We also released my favorite wacky expansion last year in Trailblazers, the Sasquatch expansion. I've never seen another expansion do anything as wild and ambitious with a game system as what Ryan Courtney did to Trailblazers with the Sasquatch expansion. He effectively took a largely solitaire route building puzzle and turned it into a social deduction cooperative game. And it works. It works so well that this ties the solo modes as my favorite way to play Trailblazers. The potential for a hidden traitor, the Sasquatch, keeps the experience much spicier than most cooperative titles. The tricky balance between optimizing your trails and playing defensively makes things interesting for the humans, while Sasquatch has to toe the line between blatant sabotage and plausible deniability. This one is definitely best played with the same group over multiple sessions, but the good news is that it plays great at all counts from 2 to 4. We also published my favorite combo-tastic strategy game in Cascadero in 2024. As the name of the game implies, Cascadero is all about harnessing that juicy cascade of bonuses that awaits you on the tracks. In this box, legendary, elegant, interactive Knizia tile placement gameplay meets addicting, combo-tastic, crunchy track considerations. A refreshing twist on the genre from the king of tiles. I've played this dozens of times now and still have a blast every time. The 2 boards and modes also add in a nice bit of strategic variety that is fun to cycle through. That leads us into my favorite classic style roll and write in Cascadito. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of roll and write games, but I'm always happy to revisit Cascadito. The dice drafting and competitive achievements keep things spicy, while the sheet variety and tough decisions make this game a joy to return to. If you prefer something a little more forgiving than Cascadero, then Cascadito might hit the sweet spot for you. We closed out 2024 with 3 very recent releases, one of them being my favorite spicy little card game, Cat Blues: The Big Gig. One of my favorite card games and favorite auction games is 1998's Cat Blues, and it's made even better thanks to Dr. Knizia's magic development touch in Cat Blues: The Big Gig. And how does he squeeze so much out of a deck of 6 unique cards? I'm still surprised to see how differently each game plays out within a 3-act session. The Quartet tokens help to ramp up the pressure in Game 3 as players try to muscle each other out of the big tips. So spicy and smooth, just like a good jazzy tune. Artist Alicia Giroux brought immense personality to this production with the cat musicians and colors. One can almost hear the serenading blues as they meld their quartets and scoop up mouse tips. Another jazzy release in 2024 is my favorite non-Knizia tile placement game, Bebop. Tile placement is my all-time favorite genre in board games. It's so versatile, interactive, and engaging, and it's why Knizia and I get along so well. As a then unpublished designer, Robert Hovakimian found the way to my heart by pitching a unique tile layer that features oodles of dice. The 2 layers, placing tiles and inserting dice, are paired beautifully with the 3 ways to score points. I love how the game provides a dynamic arc and a quick playtime. You are doing the same simple actions the entire session, but the focus and pressures shift dramatically from start to finish. Add in the vibrant art from Weberson Santiago, clackety dice from a draw bag, and a variety of festival maps, and I'm a happy boy. Finally, the last Bitewing Games release of 2024, my favorite modern Euro game, is Shuffle and Swing. I've been complaining for years about Euro games that are too solitaire, too bloated, too dull, and too long. Shuffle and Swing is the remedy to my afflictions. Everything here ties back to the core objective of building instruments and claiming credit for it. It's unusually focused for a game of this genre. Navigating these shifting rondels and evolving shared incentives makes for a consistently gripping session. The variety of instrument boards with unique objectives is fun to explore as well. And huge props to the artists, Gary Chalk and Alicia Giroux, and graphic designer Brant Brinkerhoff for making something that is a joy to bask in when it is laid out on the table. Due to how grueling and demanding the creation of a mid-weight Eurogame is, from playtesting to development, from graphic design to rulebook editing, and because it strays into the distant fringe of our target audience and focus of projects, we will likely never publish a game of this type again. But I'm glad it exists, I love to play it, and I'm happy we put out a modern-style Eurogame that swims against the current in many ways. So that wraps up our Bitewing Games 2024 celebration, which means it's time for the final awards, starting with the Best Expansion of 2024. And the winner of the Best Expansion is Heat Heavy Rain. Now, I wagered that Ark's Blighted Reach would have won if I had been able to play it, but Heat Heavy Rain is great as well for allowing a 7th player to join the fun and for providing 2 new tracks to race on. Honorable mentions for the Best Expansion include Through the Desert, the Bazaar expansion. Half the modules are great, the other half I could live without. And Sky Team Turbulence. More Sky Team is always a good thing. As for the best new-to-me game released before 2024, the winner is Innovation. I discovered a lot of killer old games last year, but Innovation has left an impression on me unlike any other. This feels like a Civilization game that I can play for decades and never grow tired of. Honorable mentions for best new-to-me game released before 2024. There's a lot of them, but I'll mention a few. Strike, Great Plains, Flowerfall, and Drill Polter. Now for the best reskin/reprint award. This is an old classic game brought back to life, sometimes with a new visual style. The winner of this game is Fantastics. Fantastics is Mario Party meets Bingo, conjured up by Reiner Knizia himself. Players proceed through a series of challenges ranging from dexterity to bluffing to trivia to memory to charades in order to cover the spaces on their bingo card. Now, I've played kitchen sink party games like this before, and they've always landed with a thud. But Fantastics, with its charming piles of colorful sticks and its weirdly captivating deck of challenging cards, has proven to be a consistent delight. Another honorable mention for the best reskin/reprints is Hamster Roll. a hamster wheel dexterity game that is fun for all ages. Next up is the Comeback Award. This is a game I haven't played in years, but it's even better than I remember it. The winner of the Comeback Award is Hive Pocket. This is a stinking good 2-player abstract strategy game, and it's portable. Honorable mentions for the Comeback Award include Just One and No Mercy. And on the opposite end, the Fall from Grace Award. Once respected, now rejected. The winner of the Fall from Grace Award is Ark Nova. After a year-long break, I found revisiting Ark Nova to be a much less enjoyable experience than our previous plays. Sadly, I find myself no longer a fan due to the exhausting demands of the game. I simply find more fun out of playing multiple faster and more focused games in the same amount of time. Another award, how about the Best Game I Didn't Love? Just because I respect a game doesn't mean I want to play it. And the winner of the Best Game I Didn't Love is SETI. I'll admit, it was a lot of fun, but it also had way too much downtime. So much that I decided to sell it after the first play. It's kind of in the same bucket as Ark Nova for me right now. Honorable mentions for Best Game I Didn't Love include Battalion War of the Ancients. This one was just too battle tactics-ish for our tastes. And Altair Dawn of Civilization. This is a neat deck builder area control hybrid that often ends up feeling a bit too solitaire for my tastes. Next award is for the worst game that I adored. Either this game is objectively bad, or more likely, it is just bad for most people in my gaming circle. And the winner of the worst game I adored is Fairy. Now, to be clear, I wouldn't call Fairy a bad game. Rather, it simply feels like a barely game. Players merely make a hand signal to indicate what their guess is for the next card to be flipped from the deck. Higher, lower, or same suit, or the mystically rare Fairy. Some players will hate it, but I think it's an absolute joy, especially with larger groups and especially as a $10 tiny box game. I love you, Fairy. Now, one honorable mention for worst game I adored is Da Da Da. The rules for scoring this game are basically broken at most player counts, and some players will never click with this game, but it is great fun to play. And the award for Best Kids Game, tested and certified by my 3- and 5-year-old girls in 2024, the winner is Sleidaoscope. This one has proven to be enjoyable for the entire family, and it has seen the most plays of any family game we've played with our girls. It also teaches kids how to visualize effects and search for optimal solutions. Nice. Honorable mentions for Best Kids Games of 2024 include Spotlight, a real-time searching game with novel Spotlight components, and Dodo, a real-time memory game with an epic rolling egg. And finally, 2 more awards here. We're going to stray a bit outside of board gaming with the Best Video Game of 2024. The winner being Animal Well. While most AAA game studios seem to be creatively bankrupt, indie games are doing just fine. I've grown tired of major sequels and IPs beating the same dead horse for years now, so it's incredibly refreshing to stumble across imaginative games like Animal Well. This Metroidvania-style game is one of thrilling discovery with staggering depth to its layered puzzles. The more you think outside the box, the more you'll uncover in this literal rabbit hole of fun. Honorable mentions for Best Video Game of 2024 include Astrobot, the best modern 3D Mario game that doesn't feature Mario, and Balatro, an addictive poker-style card game. This one's particularly good for board gamers if you haven't played it. And the final category is the Best Film of 2024, with the winner being Hundreds of Beavers. Anyone who says that the comedy genre is dead hasn't seen Hundreds of Beavers. This wacky, Looney Tunes-style, live-action indie film is one of the most inventive and hilarious flicks I've ever seen. Bravo. Honorable mentions for Best Film of 2024, I've just got one of them, Dune Part 2, a chills-inducing sci-fi epic. Denis Villeneuve is easily one of the best working directors at the moment. And that's going to do it for our Best of 2024 podcast episode. What a great year for games. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Nick Murray, and you've been listening to the Bitewing Games podcast.